What's up, everybody? Welcome in Joey Brown's College Football Show. I'm Joey Brown, joined by my guest host, the TPC Sawgrass playing Tyler Crane. Tyler, what's up?
What's going on, guys?
Hey, guys, before we get too far into anything, y'all go ahead on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and TikTok as well. Also, I want to give a shout out to the newest show that's also on our YouTube channel, which is Coaches Cut Up. It's a high school football coaches podcast. Had our first episode last week with Chad Bennett, head coach White County High School in Georgia. And then we're going to have on another high school coach this week. So we'll get that out to y'all in the next couple of days. So as long as you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, you'll get that as well. So Tyler, you kind of had a career, or say a sporting milestone this week, right?
Yeah, it was an experience for sure. It was for those that don't know, I like to think of myself as an avid golfer. I haven't got to play that much since my little boy came a couple years ago, but I play as much as I can, and got the opportunity to go to Sawgrass and play the stadium course, which is only about 20 minutes from my house now. But man, you talk about legendary. That was a lot of fun, and probably I don't know. I said the hardest course I've ever played. Might not necessarily be the hardest, but the most challenging for sure. It's very challenging, but man, I had a blast with that, and can't look forward to getting to do that again sometime soon.
So, like 17, is it as intimidating in person as it looks like on TV?
Oh, absolutely. The weather's been crazy down here, like cold for us.
Uh-huh.
But that morning it was pretty chilly, and about the time we teed off, I think it was low 60s, but the wind was blowing 15, 20 miles an hour all day. So obviously it made it a lot harder, but we got to 17. It was getting close to about 6 o'clock. So the sun was starting to go down. I mean, it was beautiful, sunset and all that. But the wind was blowing, like swirling, about 15 miles an hour or so. So, long story short, first one hit the green and went off the bat, and then the second one stayed. But I hit I think it was a 9-iron from 130 yards, and usually that's a wedge. And I was just glad it stayed on the green, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that would be me. I would be like, that water. I mean, I find the water wherever I play, so that wouldn't be hard at all for me to hit that one in the water. So,
Well, that's the thing, every hole, if you look at the course, every hole just about it has pine, straw, and rough, which is about a foot and a half deep, all the way up one side, and then whichever other side is a fairway bunker that runs just about the length of the fairway, and then water on that side. And you got a fairway about this big. You got to land stuff in. So I kept it out of the water and the sand, but the rough got me a few times. So if you got in the rough, you would like, well, I'm probably making bogey at the best here. So, but it was so much fun, man. It just getting to play where, the pros have played, and, seeing them hit shots and you hitting the same shot. Man, like it.
Yeah, that would be the biggest thing for me. Is like you say, playing something like that where you have a chance to play a popular or famous course like that you see all those guys on TV play, and like I said, one of the most famous holes is at 17. So
it was.
pretty cool, man.
I'm not gonna lie, my knees were shaking a little bit. What's that first? The first one hits the green and like hits the middle of the green and just bounces and rolls off the back. And I was like, okay, I can do this. The second one, I took a little bit off, and it hits the front of the green and rolls up to the top. I was scared it was going to roll back down off in the water, but thank goodness it just stops. I ended up,
Yeah.
I think I ended up, I mean, in all, I think I double bogeyed the hole, but, I was like, hey, I finished the hole. Not everybody in the group finished the hole, so I was like, hey, I accomplished something anyways.
There you go. What like I said, we're talking off air. You're kind of off air activities playing, popular golf courses are a little bit. It's more interesting than my habits this weekend. I was talking about. I wish I could work out or do anything exercise wise because I think I've thrown out my lower back going to trampoline park with the kids over the weekend. So we won't get too much into that, but that's that was my weekend. So we're gonna cover some topics tonight. It's been about 10 days since we recorded last. Honestly, it's been kind of quiet in the world of college football in that time. There's been some stories. We're gonna hit on some of that, and then our biggest thing we're spending most of the time tonight on is we're going to we're going to have a series as we go through this offseason of different rankings of college football related things. And the first one's going to be ranking the head coach and hires from this past offseason. So we're going to each have five, and we'll count those down and kind of debate them and talk about them. Obviously, that's something that's every college football fan out there is always interested in, the coaching hires from the previous offseason. So we'll get into that. Just kind of going through and hitting a few of these topics so Tennessee quarterback Joey Aguilar, on February 4th, so last Wednesday, he was granted a temporary restraining order. So that what all it means is the NCAA cannot restrict his eligibility due to his junior college eligibility that he played. So he played at I believe it was San Francisco Community College before he went to App State, and before he was at UCLA, and before he was at Tennessee. And so the NCAA cannot restrict his eligibility based on that year that he was there. And so now it's not the end of this at all. Like, it's just a temporary restraining order. So the NCAA has to come out and they have to there's got to be like a final ruling. But most of the time in the past on these cases like this, the temporary restraining order is kind of like the precedent for the case and makes it where that basically he's going to be eligible. That's the expectation. So, Tyler, what do you think about that? What do you think that does for Tennessee's offseason?
I mean, obviously it'll help Tennessee if they come back. I mean, you got the same situation going on in Ole Miss with Trinidad, so I
Yeah.
don't know. You're seeing a lot of that talk about in basketball right now with Alabama and Betty Yako and that whole situation, which they just came out now and said he's ineligible. So, of course, they waited till after they played Auburn to do that. But can't really say anything because Auburn just went flat tonight and lost to Bandy. So, it is what it is. Um, I don't know. I feel like these guys. I mean, obviously, if you're a college quarterback and you're probably not going to be a starter in the NFL. You may be a backup practice squad guy. You kind of want to stay in college as long as you can, so you can make as much money as you can. Now,
Right.
the only problem with that is you're just so many high school players are losing out on opportunities because you got these guys that don't want to leave, and no fault to them, but these coaches at these colleges are like, well, he might not be the best NFL quarterback, but he's pretty daggum good for us, and he's what we need, and he's got experience, and that's a big deal when you get to that part. Now, again, I know we talked about it last time, but I think you're going to start seeing a lot of universities and stuff go toward more older players, more having the ability to experience and those type things are going to be beneficial moving forward. I mean, you saw it with Indiana. You're starting to see a lot more schools kind of shift to that, you know, go back to college basketball model of getting older and not worrying so much about, freshmen and stuff, which kind of makes signing day and stuff not as fun because of the early signing period, and you still technically have signing period in February, but um, I don't know. I feel like it takes a lot away from the high school players, but in Tennessee's case, he can play. It'll definitely help him.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, he would definitely be as far as the SEC returning quarterbacks. I mean, he'd be one of the more prominent ones. Especially the year they had offensively. Um, I know Tennessee's took a step back record wise last year, and their defense was not as good as the past couple years, and so we'll see if what kind of outlook that gives their season, but it definitely gives it a look up. And it's interesting contrast to the Bediako case in Alabama basketball. And now, like, a court finally ruled against basically Bediako had been ruled ineligible by the NCAA. He filed this in court to try to do the same thing that Aguilar has done, and the court ruled against him. So it's interesting to see, is the NCAA finally going to get the courts or some of these courts on their side where they can stem some of this, hey, just sue and stay as long as you can stuff. Um, but obviously there's a difference between a guy that's been playing professional basketball coming back to college versus somebody who's just trying to get another year to play college
No,
football. So
100%, 100%.
yeah, that'll be
Yeah.
something interesting to watch. So kind of on the note, you talked about high school recruiting. So last Wednesday was National Signing Day. If it's kind of like one of those things. If a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, did it really happen? That's kind of what February signing days become, which is just, if you'd told me that 10 years ago, like as a college football fan, like I would not have believed it. Like, the only way I knew it was signing day the other day was literally just sitting, you know, there Wednesday morning, just scrolling through Twitter, and like, all the football accounts that I follow were tweeting out their official signees and that stuff, like the graphics and stuff they make now and put out. And that's really all that it was. And it's kind of crazy how the early signing period in December now has just, and then of course all the portal stuff in January, it has just made February signing day just a complete after.
Yeah, it's no fun right now. I mean, I understand why they do it, but from a fan perspective, it's terrible. Like it just really just kind of screws everything up. And then, excuse me, they have these press conferences and stuff. And what are you talking about? You're just talking to talk. I sat there and listened to Alex Golesh talk the other day, and he gave a lot of great insight, but it wasn't like a normal signing day press conference. But
Yeah.
like I said, it's just changing of the times, and you either got to change and evolve, or you get left behind.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember, like, like you talk about as a fan, this, I mean, I think it makes following high school recruiting, in general, a little bit less interesting, just because there's no longer that countdown to what, when everything's going to matter, when they're going to have to sign on the dotted line. I mean, I remember February signing day used to be just like appointment, just not just television. Like, they had, there were shows you could watch on ESPN and stuff like that, like signing
Yeah,
day specials, but then just sitting there on your phone, like scrolling through Twitter or whatever, just updating to see, is so-and-so, has they sent in their letter of intent?
right.
When is this guy's signing ceremony? What hat's he going to put on? And all of the shenanigans of, like, I mean, I'll never forget, like, watching Isaiah Crowell, running back to sign with Georgia, take the dog, like the little baby English bulldog, out and hold it up like it's his signing. And um, you know, parents who disagreed with their kids where they were signing, like running off with the letter of intent,
Yeah,
like driving off and stuff like that. And
no
basically, you'd
doubt.
have chases and be like, well, um, his mom didn't agree with him signing with Tennessee or something, so she wants
Yeah,
him to sign with Alabama. So she's kidnapped the letter of intent and held it hostage. Like, you don't
it's
get those
crazy.
stories as much anymore.
No, Cyrus Quandro and those guys who picks Auburn on National Signing Day, and all of a sudden, like that letter of intent never comes. And,
Yeah.
it showed up in Tuscaloosa. Crazy how that works.
Yeah. And I'll never forget how many guys used to, like, it made the Under Armour All American game and like the Army All American game. They'd always have them in January.
Yeah.
And a lot of those big time guys would wait until then to commit, like literally a month before signing day. That is unheard of. Now they all, like, if they're not committed by the beginning of their senior football season, like, it's kind of crazy. It's an odd thing now. They all
Yeah.
commit, usually their junior year, and it's a done deal. Like, there's not a whole lot of flips and stuff like that happen anymore. And I'm sure there's other things that affect it, but I think obviously the December signing day where most of these guys can just go ahead and get it over with is it takes care of a lot of that. But I'll never forget the good old days of, like I said, getting on 24/7 or Rivals or something like that, and just,
Yeah.
seeing the rundown that day of, from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on signing day of like the big recruits, commitment ceremonies, and kind of, watching the recruiting rankings go up and down based on, if this guy signing here,
Yeah.
or
Well, and I think you still
whatever.
have that. I mean, it's just, you have the early signing period. So you have the two signing periods. So you kind of have that in the first one. It's just everybody is so used to having that February signing period. And, some people will sign a handful of people, but it's kind of like backup guys because now you know, you got the high school signing day in December, which is kind of the big one now. And then you have the portal. Well, then by the time that second signing period rolls around, just about everybody's full. Unless somebody's taking a flyer on somebody, you're just not really looking for too much.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right about that. It's not much of it's there's not a lot of drama left when it gets to this point.
Yeah, everybody knows where to go. And everything has moved up so much. I mean, just a couple, last week and maybe a couple weeks ago, you had junior days and you had all this kind of stuff. Things that you were seeing more in the summer have now pushed into January, March. People are going to start taking official visits in June, July, August. You'll still have a handful that'll take it during games and stuff in the fall, but most of everybody will have taken official visits in the summer, know where they're
Yeah,
going to go in the fall, and then they'll be enrolling in December. So everything is, technically shifted up by about 3 or 4 months altogether. So it's just the world we live in now.
yeah. Um, Something else that happened last week, that I definitely want to get your thoughts on because it's so closely tied with Auburn. But Florida State announced Gus Malzahn, is retiring. So I think there was a lot of rumors going on last year with obviously the disaster that ended up being Florida State season about, Malzahn came in obviously from UCF, and what was going to be his, long-term plans there. Was he going to get replaced by Norvell, or was he going? And so he retires. So obviously Malzahn's somebody who, you know, is been as far as college football goes. I guess since he broke in really as the Arkansas OC, I guess in like '06 or something like that. I think if I remember
Yeah,
right, like
somewhere.
with Darren McFadden and those guys. But then from a high school coaching standpoint, obviously he pretty legendary in Arkansas as a high school coach, known for all the up tempo stuff. He put out a book back then, the like the principles of the up tempo offense. I've got a copy of it somewhere here where I bought a long time ago. He was always kind of on the cutting edge of all like the no huddle stuff in high school and the spread stuff in high school, and that obviously made its way up to college, and he kind of followed it, and then you know had a pretty interesting career going from, like I said, OC at Arkansas. He had some time at Tulsa, and then obviously a bunch of time as the coordinator and head coach at Auburn, and then
All right.
like I said, finished up with Central Florida and Florida State. But as an Auburn fan, what do you think kind of what's your thoughts about Gus Malzahn and his career?
You know, a lot of people give Malzahn a lot of uh, guff, I guess. I always liked Malzahn. I think his problem that ultimately got him was not putting a lot of emphasis on the offensive line part, not being able to recruit, um, not necessarily better offensive linemen, but being able to go get guys that can make a difference. Um, he would just kind of plug and play and, you know, find guys that would be serviceable. And that kind of hurt him. You know, he lost some games because of that, but he was good for every 2 to 3 years to make a run at it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
obviously as the OC in 2010, 2013 as the head coach. I honestly believe if Kerryon Johnson doesn't get banged up in 17, we got a chance to, get in the playoff that year. he he did some great things. He did a lot of things for Auburn that I thought I'd never get to see. Uh, and then I guess my first interaction with him was probably, well, when he was OC, 2010. Went to a coaching clinic and stuff at Auburn, and got to meet him and talk to him a little bit. And, obviously got your picture made. And at that time, I was as green as it gets. So I was trying to soak up everything at the time, and got to meet him a few more times. And then obviously once I got older and got to be around Auburn's program a little bit more, got to be around him a little bit, but I think he did some great things at Auburn. I think he did some great things everywhere he's been. Um, he's a very genuine guy. What you see is what you get. He's not fake. There's a lot of college coaches out there that'll be one way to you, to your face, and then you never hear anything else from him again. But if if Malzahn said he was going to give you a call or come by his school or whatever it was, he would do it. And a lot of people liked him, but ultimately, just like sometimes it works out for you, sometimes you don't. Everybody wanted Auburn to stay here. We don't want to stay here. We want to move up. Well, doesn't always work in your favor. So I haven't seen and again he's had some rough years toward the end. Not necessarily rough, but rougher than what we expectations were. But yeah, you get what you ask for sometimes, and boy, the last 5 years it sucked.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's like you say, you have or your program's at a certain level, and you feel like maybe a guy's kind of gotten stagnant or stale, and it's time to move on after a decade or so. And then, Auburn has the last 5 years that they've had, and it's kind of
Awful.
you wish you could go back to doing what Malzahn did, and he beat Alabama 3 times or something like that.
Yeah, I
I mean,
mean you
that's
were going 8-4, 9-3, 10-2. Okay, but you have a program like Georgia. Auburn looked at Auburn looked at Malzahn the way Georgia fans looked at Rick. They loved Rick.
yeah,
They were glad he was there. He did a great job. He elevated the program, but they couldn't get over the hump. Well, Malzahn got over the hump. Like he got them there. It was just, I mean, it's back then when you had the two divisions, SEC West and the East. It was so much harder to get to the SEC championship out of the West than it was the East. Plus, your East opponent was Georgia, who was at the top of the East. Like it's hard.
yeah.
And I think he did a great job, but you know, I I would. I mean, hindsight's 2020. I mean, I would have loved for him to stay or do anything different than what they've done. But I tell you this, I think they kind of switching gears from Malzahn and God love him, he deserves to go out on top and having last year, at least he got to beat Alabama one more time. But um, I I think Auburn has got the guy that they need. You know, a lot of people might not agree with it, but he gives off a different vibe than some of the people that's been there in the past, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Malzahn's legacy, like I said, I know everybody knows nationally and from a college standpoint. To me, I think um, I think his high school coaching achievements and like I said, kind of developing that up tempo spread stuff early on, that's something that's obviously his legacy, kind of trickled up from there. And then you started seeing that stuff all over the place. And then I mean,
Yeah.
now everybody doesn't go super fast all the time like that, but back in the day, like that's when those guys like Malzahn first started doing that. I mean, where they were just going as fast as lightning every single snap, like defenses didn't really know what to do, and so I mean, that's to me that's part of his definitely a big part of his legacy is that offensive part of it like that.
Well, he changed the way that you had to play defense, and
Yeah,
you know whether it was him, whether it was Chip Kelly, you know all those kind of guys. They changed the way defenses are called today. They've changed the way defenses are played, and they've changed the way that personnel for defenses are looked at. I mean, go back and look at the 2011, 2009, 2012 Alabama teams where them and LSU where it's 9-6, and they're lining up with 265-pound linebackers. Like you
yeah,
can't play that way today. Like you just can't. Uh, Teams are going to spread you out and make you play sideline to sideline, and you've got to have you got to have guys that can run at every position. Now those 250, 260 mile linebackers are buck outside rush guys, or they're playing five technique. You know, so
right.
um, you got to be able to run. That backer now is 225, 230 that can run 4 or 5. Basically it's a safety move down and backers are moved down. And if you can find a freak defensive lineman, you've done something because those guys are, they're unicorns right now. They're the ones getting all the big NIL deals because there ain't a
Oh yeah.
lot of them out there. Offensive linemen and defensive linemen, that's where it's at.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's that part of it definitely changed with those offensive changes. So, kind of sticking with the coaching stuff, we're going to get into the biggest part of what we're going to talk about, and that is grading these coaching hires. So, we're going to grade top 5 coaching hires of this offseason. We're going to go 5 and count down to 1. So obviously you had some big jobs come open this time. I mean, LSU, Florida, Penn State, Michigan. I mean, you had some really big jobs, and then obviously there towards the end, you had jobs that some of those bigger jobs are filled, and so that opened up places like you know Ole Miss coming open, and then you had some more Midland jobs like Iowa State and Kansas State, which are players in the Big 12 usually. You had some of those jobs coming open late to fill some of those bigger jobs. So, um, I'm gonna start my number 5, kind of off the board, just a little bit here, and my number 5 is UCLA. Bob Chesney. All right, they hired Bob Chesney from James Madison. He was at James Madison for 2 years, replaced guy you've probably heard of, Kurt Signetti. And uh, the reason I like Bob Chesney is because he kind of fits the mold of Signetti. He's a little bit younger, but before he was at JMU, he was at Holy Cross, so he was in the FCS program, had a lot of success there, and he's carried a lot of those same guys on his staff from place to place, and now he gets a Big Ten job, albeit UCLA's not on equal footing by no means with Ohio State and Michigan and Oregon when it comes to spending and resources. But I really like what he's done at his past stops, and I think it kind of fits the mold of instead of going and getting the hot coordinator or trying to get the biggest name, right? They go get somebody who's just a proven head coach from a lower division and said, hey, just bring your program to the highest division of college football, to the Big Ten, and let's see what it does here. And I think UCLA last time, obviously hiring Deshaun Foster a couple years ago, that was a big misstep because they meant well, but the guy just had no head coaching experience, and it faltered pretty quickly. This is really the opposite of that, and so Chesney's my number 5.
I'm gonna go with James Franklin as my number 5. Uh, and he probably would be higher, but he was kind of the first guy off the board, you know, because Virginia Tech came open so early. Uh, I love James Franklin. I think he's a great fit at Virginia Tech, and I think he's a great fit in the ACC just for the mere fact that there's not an Ohio State, there's not a Michigan, there's not an Indiana. I mean, Miami, but you know, you got one. So if he has a good season this year, he might be able to get Virginia Tech to an ACC championship game. I don't know how good Virginia Tech will be, but just in that conference alone, like if you can get the stars aligned just a little bit, you got a shot. I mean, Duke showed you last year, like you can not be the greatest team in the world and still make the ACC championship. So,
Oh, yeah.
you know, I think he's got a shot at really turning Virginia Tech around. And man, that what an atmosphere that place is. If you've ever been to Blacksburg, like for a game at night, that place is rocking. And let them get a little bit hot. They've had success in the past, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for them to get it back.
Yeah, that place is definitely on my bucket list of places to go see a game. And like you say, they've had plenty of success. Obviously, Frank Beamer, since he retired about 10 years ago, they've kind of been pretty mediocre since then. They had a couple good years and Justin Fuente was there, but that's one that, yeah, I think you're right. I think that could be a quick turnaround if things just go
Yeah.
right. And it can be one that really goes quick, I think. All right, so my number 4. Okay, and picking these, out of these 5 guys, like I said, these big jobs that come open, picking 5 is kind of an interesting exercise, but it can be difficult. But with number 4, I'm going with Alex Golesh at Auburn. All right, your guy there. I know last show we talked a good bit about him. Some of the same reasons. I think he's got a proven acumen as an offensive coach, and he has a system, and he knows what he's doing. He knows what he needs to make it run and function. And I think the biggest thing, like you say, for Auburn, talking about Gus Malzahn and that kind of legacy since he's been gone, is just having some stability and not taking the big swing for a Hugh Freeze or somebody like that. Getting just a steady hand in there that has, a proven track record at a smaller school and has an even longer track record as an offensive guy, and then just building the continuation of that defensive staff around him that was there that was pretty good. And I think you've got, and everybody that watched Auburn last year, they had talent. Now obviously a lot of guys left, so there's not a complete, continuation of the roster from last year, but you're going to have a lot of good people, obviously signed through the portal in the recruiting class. So I like Golesh at Auburn.
Good, good one. I'm gonna go with number 4 for me, John Sumrall. I think Sumrall, at his time at Troy, I got to know him pretty well. He's a very intense coach, very process oriented kind of guy. I think he fits what Florida probably wants to try to do, kind of getting that edge back. Kind of put him and Golesh kind of maybe not the same guy, with how they go about things, but I think they both are trying to accomplish the same goal. Um, and he'll do a great job at Florida. You know, you can recruit at Florida, you can recruit in a lot. I mean, if you're in the SEC, you should be able to recruit. Um, but I think Sumrall will do a fantastic job at Florida, and I think it's a good change up for Florida as far as personality and that kind of stuff. And I think that's the biggest question mark is are those personalities going to blend together? And if it does, you got something cooking at Florida. But you know, you got to get all those domino pieces and stuff to line up just right to make it work the way it needs to work.
Yeah, I like Summerall too. As much as I hate to say it, as a Georgia guy that Um, I think, and I heard a couple people say it this year, like, Summerall's from Huntsville originally, played at Kentucky, like you say, coached at
Mhm.
Troy, and then obviously been at Tulane, but like he could fit any. If you talk about fit and like SEC coaches, he could have fit any SEC job. Like he could have walked into any SEC job and been a fit. He just kind of has that part of the culture about him. And so, I mean, there were talks obviously with Auburn, it seemed like, and then he ends up, settling on and going to Florida. I think, I think the guy's won everywhere he's been, and I
Right.
do like his coordinator hires. Brad White from Kentucky, who's at Kentucky forever. Really good defensive coach. I mean, Kentucky's been good on defense pretty much the whole time Stoops was there. And then offense, obviously Buster Faulkner, who, he's somebody that I am a huge fan of. I've studied Buster Faulkner stuff all the time, and I mean, he had great success at Tech, and then he was a big part of Georgia's couple national championships as the quarterback analyst on staff there. I think Buster is really he's somebody that does a lot of really good stuff offensively, and I think Florida's, they that hire with Summerall and especially the coordinator hires, that just kind of confirms it in terms of the quality hire that they got there. So I think that's a good one for sure.
And I think, well,
Um,
and just the last little bit on that with him, once you're a head coach, you're not really doing the ball aspect of it. So
yeah,
being able to go and get really good coordinators and let those guys do their job, you just be the face of the program, you set the culture. I think
right.
he can do that.
Right. My number three is Lane Kiffin. All right. I know some people, as much as made about Kiffin and everything around him, that might seem low. Three might seem low in most people's eyes, but I think it's a good hire. I think it is an upgrade from Brian Kelly. I think Kiffin brings some things, obviously, from an offensive standpoint. That Charlie Weiss coming with him is a big get. I think they're immediately going to be much better on offense. Got the quarterback in the portal, and I think their recruiting will be fine. Um, to me, the thing with Lane is at some point is there going to be a breaking point with all the attention stuff because he's still doing. And I don't think he's done anything wrong or bad since he's got to LSU. But if you follow him on social media, it's still the same old Lane Kiffin stuff, and like at some point, like is that attention? Like I think obviously it gets to a point where it can be detrimental. And you saw it at Ole Miss this year with the whole is he going to go, is he going to stay stuff. Like I do think he likes the attention, and that's pretty proven at this point. So to me, I think the Kiffin hire is a good hire. That is that attention part like is Lane Kiffin ever going to be a head coach that can feasibly win a national championship, you know, and not let his personality get in the way? So I'm fascinated to see it take place at LSU. It's just it's kind of the quintessential college football storyline, just everything that's wrapped up in it, and I can't wait to watch it. But I think he's a good hire, obviously. And what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, just to be honest with you, that's my number three as well. I mean, Kiffin is Kiffin is polarizing. Kiffin understands the game of being relevant. um, he knows that recruits see that, and he does such a good job of getting staying in the media enough that people have to talk about it. And the more people talk about it, the better it is for him. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I think that you left a situation where Ole Miss where you could do no wrong. And if you won 9 or 10 games every year, you were going to get a statue built outside the stadium. But you're going to a place, if you only win 9 or 10 games a year, you ain't going to be there long.
Right.
Um, and it's championship or bust at LSU right now with everything they're putting into this. There won't be a hospital in Louisiana that has a hospital bed because every dime is going to LSU right now. So if you're living in Louisiana and you got an emergency, you're in trouble. But they are they are they are pushing all their poker chips to the middle of the table and saying, "All right, Lane, we think that you're the one that can make this happen." And he's never made it happen before.
Right.
And I'll be honest, if I think that if he had stayed at Ole Miss, I don't know if they make it as far in the playoffs as they did. I really don't. I
Right.
think at some point Kiffin's gonna Kiffin, and there's gonna be a play in the game where you need to kick a field goal, or you need to punt, or you need to do something, and he's the one that would pull the trigger and go for it, and you know swing the game. Um, And I just until he shows me that he can not force the issue in situations like that and just be smart about it, about three is as high as I can put it.
Yeah. And
And then you got to
debatably,
ask
like,
who's
I
going to be
mean,
his trigger man? Who's going to be the trigger man this year for LSU? Because the Levitt kid's still dealing with injury. He's not even going through the spring. So what happens if that injury still
yeah,
bothers him?
yeah, you're right about that. I think too, like I mean, another thing about Kiffin is like, what is Lane Kiffin's what's his most signature win as a head coach? Like, he doesn't really have one.
Beat
And
Georgia.
and you look at, I mean, his replacement at Golden or at Ole Miss with Golden, like, he's got, I mean, the win against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl is, I mean, that's a bigger win than Lane Kiffin ever had
Yeah.
at 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 Ole Miss or anywhere, Tennessee, USC, anywhere he's been the head coach. And so I think that's one of those things. Like, it's just, yeah, everything's there in place to make it happen, but until you physically see it happen, like, can you really put a ton of stock in it? So that'll be one. Obviously, that's going to be the center of attention. Um, I do think LSU has it's kind of like Virginia Tech, though. I think that it has the potential to be like, if they hit things right off the bat, like, you could be it could be November and there might be like number 3 or something. Like, they have that potential for sure. They have the talent. My number 2, you've already mentioned James Franklin. My number 1 and number 2 are going to be pretty ironic. So James Franklin, I think, obviously, if you looked in this coaching cycle, just somebody that is a proven coach, has done it for a long time, has done it at multiple places, and I think Penn State. I mean, I think honestly that the season might have ended up being a complete dumpster fire had they just waited anyway. But I think they jumped the gun completely when they fired him. I think the pay and the buyout was just absolutely crazy.
Hmm.
Firing him in October after he lost 2 games, or no, 3 games. Sorry, they lost to the Oregon, Northwestern, UCLA. But that I just think it was kind of crazy, and I think he's going to go somewhere else, a fresh start, like you say, at Virginia Tech. And it's going to be, that's a conference that's right for the picking. And I think they're just going to, I think they're going to be a lot better than they've been. And he's a guy that's just a proven head coach, and I think that's exactly what Virginia Tech needed. Um, and they got a home run out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, I like Franklin. I think he has the opportunity to do big things at Virginia Tech, just for the mere fact of, you know, if you couldn't get over the hump with Ohio State and Michigan, and that's what got you fired, well, you don't have to deal with that in the ACC. So I think you're
Yeah.
on you're on a playing field with everybody in that league. Miami probably is a little bit ahead of everybody right now, just for the money they're able to pump out. I mean, if you got to win one a year, I think Miami's one of those like, I'd much rather have to beat Miami than have to beat Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, or Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana, those guys. Like that's to me
Yeah,
that's a
for
little bit
sure.
tougher. But hey, I think he has the opportunity to do it for sure. Um, my number two, and I kind of went back and forth on this a little bit. I like my man Whittingham at Michigan. Uh, I think that is a very, very, very underrated hire. Uh, I know he, retired at Utah, but man, what a pickup by those guys. You talk about a guy that does it the right way all the time. I mean, we know Michigan's had their troubles the last few months, but um, I think that guy's going to do a fantastic job at Michigan. I think can he get them over the hump? I don't know, but man, you talk about a team that's going to do everything the right way and is going to be, X's and O's are going to be solid and uh, be run by one of the best people in the country. And I think he's got a chance to do a really good job at Michigan.
Yeah. I talked about Whittingham when he got hired on one of the first couple episodes I did. And I think, like you say, 21 years as a head coach there. That's multiple conference championships. They're always physical. They're
Yeah,
always well coached. It doesn't matter who they have. Quarterback is, they've never really had, uh, you know, they had Cam Rising, but he's probably the biggest star they've ever had there. Like they've never really had a star, like quarterback or any other skill player like that. That's just like a Heisman type of guy, and like they're just consistent, and
yeah.
you know, and I think the style of football that Michigan wants to play that they played under Harbaugh, like you're just going to take Whittingham's, all of his stuff and plug and play because they're going to be physical. They're going to play good defense. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to make it tough on you. When you start stacking the box, they're going to do all kinds of RPOs and run read options for the quarterback. A lot of people talk about his age. He's 66. Signetti's 64. So, like,
Yeah.
I think that stuff can be, as long as you're in good health and you're motivated, like you got energy. Like I think that stuff can be a little bit overrated. And
I
so
mean, if you want to be
he's
there,
one I really like.
yeah, I mean, if you want to be there, I mean, if you're in that age and you know that, like, what else am I going to do? Like, that's what you're called to do. Doesn't make sense. He probably retired and realized, man, I don't really want to do this. I really
Yeah,
want to keep coaching. So, um,
yeah,
but no, I think he's going to do a good job now. How, like you said, how long can he keep it up, and how long will he do it? I don't know, but at least it'll give him time to kind of get their ducks in a row for the next one.
yeah. Um, All right, so my number one, I said it would be ironic after picking James Franklin at number two. My number one is the guy that replaced him at Penn State, Matt Campbell. And it's kind of funny too because Penn State, like we talked about, they made the move so early in their search. It seemed like they were like in the game of musical chairs. They're going to be the last one without a seat. Like they were just striking out on everybody. It seemed like that Kalen DeBoer's name popped up seemed like it's Kalani Sitake from BYU. They were all but done deal with him. You had several other people involved in that it sounded like, oh man, this might happen. You know, kind of. all around, they go and get about their 12th choice, it seems like. And I think it's a guy they probably should have called right off the bat.
It's their best
He's a
choice.
Big Ten. He's a Big Ten guy. He's a Midwest guy. He's a proven winner. I mean, just like 2 or 3 years ago, this guy was getting thrown about for every job. USC, um, you know, any big job, Florida that came open, like he was a name that was mentioned, and the guy just didn't. He honestly didn't want to leave Iowa State. Like, and before that, when he was at Toledo, it was really hard to get him out of that job because he's a big family guy, and like he doesn't like moving his family, and I think he had really made a home at Iowa State, and they had been really good. They had more success than they ever had, and I think the Penn State job was probably too big of one for him to pass up, and I think you're going to see him come right in there. And I mean, Penn State, like I said, I don't think they ever should have fired Franklin to begin with, but I think in terms of getting somebody that is at least going to keep the program at the level that it was, that's as good as you can ask for. And I think, the guy's he's a professional. He's what I would call, he's a professional head coach. He's been a head coach for so long, and he's done it at places where he was short on resources, he's short on players, he's short on talent, and he's still won. And I think going to a place like Penn State's the first place he's ever going to be where it's like, hey, I got toys and goodies here that everybody except for maybe one or two other schools has better than me, and I think you're going to see him really flourish there.
Oh, 100%. Little side note to that, I've got some friends that are big Penn State fans, alumni. So when I was coaching, my offensive coordinator, he married a Penn State cheerleader, and both of them are Penn State big Penn State fans. Um, I award a little shout out to my guy, but he loves the hire, loves the guy, and he was on that same boat of like, man, I think they fired Franklin too early, yada yada yada. When they hired Campbell, I've never seen someone so excited. Um, because of what you said, like he should have been the first person they called. He shouldn't have never been the 10th, 11th, 12th person they called. Um, just him being from that, that area of the country and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if there's a more perfect fit than him at Penn State. Now, is is he going to be just on par with James Franklin, or is he going to be able to get him over the hump? I don't know. But as far as fit and everything that you're going to get out of the guy, I don't know if you could have had another hire at Penn State that would have fit the way that he does there. Like I mean, that's as close to a perfect hire as you could have got at Penn State, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I say he's my number one for sure.
Well, he's not my number one, and I didn't even put him in my top five, but he's definitely he's definitely one that you've got to pay attention to moving forward. I think the problem with Penn State, I think that they fumbled the ball so much during the coaching hire and just put such a bad look on it. Even though they hit it out of the ballpark with who they hired, I think the whole way that it went down kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth
Mm-hmm.
about Penn State.
Yeah.
Um, this is probably gonna sound like a homer take, but I'm gonna go with Alex Golesh. Uh, uh, I think as far as like the way that they kind of him being my number one, I think that's going to be my guy. I know that's going to sound a little bit homerish coming from me, but I'll explain why. Uh, Kind of the same thing that you talked about with uh, Penn State. It's kind of the same way I feel about him at all. Um, Golesh is exactly what Auburn needed at the time right now. We've had the recruiter. We've had the tough guy that they tried to bring in uh, with Harsin, and to me, I think Golesh brings not only a legit edge to him, he brings the energy that you need with the way that college football is set up now, and he is a no nonsense, down to the second detail oriented person. Whereas, Freeze, he's a really good recruiter, but he kind of float by the seat of his pants on some stuff. Kind of last one in, first one out, wanted to get to the golf course, do all that kind of stuff. Alex Golesh is a ball coach, and he wants things done exactly the way that it needs to be done at all. Even if it's junior day, down to where you put the table with the chips and the cookies to where you're going to be at this moment to that moment. Like, he is the most detail oriented person that I've ever come in contact with. Um, and Auburn needs a guy that has a little bit of that, us against the world mentality. And I think he brings that. Um, and I mean, he's won everywhere he's been. he was um, he was at Iowa State with those guys when they first got there. He's been at Illinois. He's been at Toledo. He's been a recruiting coordinator. He's the OC at UCF when he was with Heupel, and then from there they went to Tennessee together. And I've been fortunate to know some Tennessee guys, and I just asked them, like, "Hey, what did y'all think about Alex Golesh when he was at Tennessee?" And they just rave about him. It's like, look, when he was here, we were XYZ, but once he left, we saw a drop off with how productive. Even though Tennessee's still been productive, after he left, there was a significant difference of the way the offense
Mm-hmm.
ran. And then obviously what he's done at South Florida, kind of speaks for itself. That program had, it hit rock bottom. Uh, and he, rejuvenated those guys. Now he lost some games that he probably shouldn't have lost. Um, if they could have beat Navy, in a shootout, if they should have beat Memphis. But obviously they wouldn't play Miami, but they hung with them as long as they could, and I played them tough. But games like that you need to win, you don't need that to happen at Auburn right now. But um, I think that guy is exactly what Auburn needs right now. And again, Homer take, but uh, I think Auburn has everything it needs to be very successful. It just needs the right guy to lead the ship in the right direction. And personally, I think that's him. I never liked they kind of put all their chips in the basket of Kiffin the first time around. Didn't work out. They settled on Freeze, disaster. And I think this time they got the right guy. I really do.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think I'm really intrigued by it. I think it's an interesting deal, with his parents and stuff, it Russian immigrants and all that. Like you think Auburn football is the last thing that would kind of fit with. But I'm really intrigued. I think he's a really good coach, and I think that you're going to see. I think you'll see Auburn make an improvement regardless from what you've seen the last few years. Um, Now, just to end, just some honorable mentions, some guys that may have not made our list. I think Will Stein at Kentucky. I think Kentucky's a program that's really hungry. I think in this NIL
Yeah.
deal, they got a lot of money. There's a lot of money there that they want to win, and they've invested, built facilities, and I think he's a guy he went to Louisville. He's from Kentucky originally. I think he can. I think Kentucky's one of those. SEC is obviously so deep, but I think he can get things going there. I like Tosh Lupoy at California. I think he's a guy that's been a career assistant. He's been a lot of
Yeah.
places. Alabama, Oregon. He's been all over the NFL, and I think he's somebody that he's from a recruiting standpoint, especially. You can win in the ACC, and I think if you can get kids to a place like Cal, you can have some success. And then Ryan Silverfield at Arkansas. I think Arkansas is kind of. I don't see it as the same type of job as Kentucky in the SEC. I think Arkansas, even though you have some money up there, you have got the Walmart people, but I think Arkansas is still just it's an uphill battle, and I think anybody that can come in there and win, if you can win 7 or 8 games on average at Arkansas, and then have a year every now and then where you could win 10, like that would be a great job. And I think he's somebody that he's proven at Memphis for a while that he's a winner, and he knows that area. He's recruited that area a lot, obviously being at Memphis, and so I think I'm interested to see what he can do at Arkansas too. So
Well, a quick tie thing to him. He's from Jacksonville. He's a Jacksonville, Florida native, went to Bowles
hmm
High School. So watch that little link right there of having recruiting ties to
yeah,
Jacksonville in this area.
that's true.
You get a couple guys from down, all you need is a couple people that can get you in the door with some Florida kids, and it can definitely help you for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, guys, that's our top 5 coaching hires from this past offseason, the 25 into 26 cycle. So, our recording schedule, we'll hit another college football show around this time next week, and then look for our coaches cut up, the high school football coaches podcast. We'll have an episode of it out in the next couple of days. It'll be our second episode of that. So once again, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify or Apple, and follow us on Twitter and on TikTok as well. And you guys have a good one.